Hey everyone, my name is Brian Matias and I'd like to welcome you to episode 3 of my photo Q&A series. Now today's question comes from Wes, a member of my Facebook group called Evolve Your Eye, or just I. Joining is easy, just head over to evolveyoureye.com. Now, Wes asks, what are the initial steps in just getting started as a professional? i.e., do you need a business license and a tax ID? If so, how do you go about doing that? Well, that's a doozy of a question, but it's also an important one to ask. But before I begin, I want to preface my answer with a flat statement that I'm not a lawyer or an accountant. I'm happy to share my experiences with you here, and you're welcome to take it as friendly advice, but my firm recommendation is to always consult with a licensed accountant about this stuff. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's move on to the good stuff. The first part of Wes's question is certainly the more interesting one to me. What are the initial steps in just getting started as a professional? There's that word though, professional. Now honestly, I can't stand that word because of the misery it causes so many photographers. I've seen so many of them cringe whenever they feel the need to explain what kind of photographer they are in this sense. I interpret Wes's question as asking, how could one get started in a career where photography, in one way or another, is your primary source of income? If I'm reading into that correctly, then I tend to refer to that as a working photographer. That's exactly how I refer to myself when someone asks that also boring question of, what do you do? To that I say, I'm a working photographer, because that word, professional, has been contorted in so many different ways that it no longer has a clear definitive meaning. But I'm digressing enough. Wes is asking, all right, I decided to hang up my shingle and I'm going to go at this full force. I want to dedicate most, if not all of my time to building my business. So how do I get started? To be honest, I'd recommend not getting started, at least not right away, and here's why. When I first made my foray as a photographer years ago when I was living in Boston, I did so while keeping my regular full-time job in IT. Doing so allowed me to learn the ropes and build a real foundation for any future endeavors. It also minimized the impact of any mistake or errors that I made, and I made plenty of them. But even then, I didn't take that business too seriously because I never protected myself financially. In other words, I never incorporated. This scared me at the time, and when I combined that with my overall lack of business experience because I was lacking, I decided to walk away from working for myself, but I ended up still working in the photo industry. I was just aligned with other corporations like On1 and Google and Sony. And I did that for almost a decade until I reached a point where I felt comfortable enough to go at it as a business owner. Except this time, I knew that I had to financially protect myself and my family. I did this by forming an S corporation, and I got a tax ID as a result. Now, there are many ways you can go about forming an S corporation, and mind you that this is all geared for a US-based business. Rather than fumble through the process on my own, though, I decided to work with an accountant. Unfortunately, my wife, Nicole, who has been incorporated for years, already had a wonderful accountant in the area, and she took me on as a new client. Now, depending on who you talk to, you'll be told either to get a limited liability company, or LLC, or form a corporation. In my opinion, the only person you should be listening to is the accountant because they will be able to recommend a course of action that's tailored to your business, tax, and growth needs. I love my accountant because I set everything on autopilot. My one instruction to her is to just keep me out of jail as it relates to taxes. So she has my credit card number on file and just bills me whenever work needs to be done. And trust me, there's a decent amount of work. As a business owner, you'll be responsible for tracking expenses, you'll have to pay new forms of taxes like payroll taxes to yourself, among other things. Still, despite all the added burdens, I feel so much safer knowing that my personal assets are protected in a worst case scenario because I'm already incorporated. But all this talk about corporations and taxes and businesses are so far beyond the first steps that I worry about people putting the cart in front of the horse. Before I consider any business, I'd first verify some of the more basic questions. Like, what's your business name? Do you have that domain name locked in? What about the vanity URLs on some of the major social media platforms? Do you have those? And most importantly, do you even have a business plan? Because let me tell you, if you don't, then incorporating should be the very last thing to think about. Before I made the move to incorporate, I spent all of 2015 building a range of premium products built for my audience, as well as an e-commerce platform to sell them on. I put all of my energy into building a newsletter that I've been meticulously curating, and I've regularly surveyed my followers to ensure that I have a viable customer base by creating products that they actually want to buy. And in between all of that, I still had to put the majority of my time and effort with my role at Sony. It wasn't until I had serious confidence in my capabilities that I decided to terminate my contract with Sony and form Matiash Incorporated. There have been days when I've regretted my decision for sure, but there have also been other days where I've been so thankful to be my own boss. Now, the fact that photography is the industry in which my business operates is a very small part of the equation. The odds of making a viable living by simply taking photos are really stacked strongly against your favor. First, you have to figure out what the value-added products are that only you can provide. Then you have to find an audience willing to buy those products. And finally, you have to lock in your online and social infrastructure to deliver those products. And then, and only then, once you've got all of that settled, then you should put some real thought into whether incorporating is the right move. Now, none of this is meant to be discouraging in any way. My goal is simply to share my experiences with you as I live them, without accentuating any details, in the hopes that it helps you avoid the pitfalls that I ran into myself. Thanks again for your wonderful question, Wes. It's a tough one to answer, and I really appreciate the opportunity to let me try to share my thoughts. And to everyone else out there, if you want to participate in this Q&A series, just join my Facebook group called Evolve Your Eye by going to evolveyoureye.com. Thanks a lot.